Hi, I'm Craig Dick with Phospholutions, the VP of Sales and Marketing, and today we will talk about our technology called RhizoSorb. We call it the next generation of phosphorus fertilizer. So if you think about MAP or DAP fertilizer, really nothing much has changed there since it was invented and developed in the 60s. So why are we looking at improving phosphorus? Well, the big thing right now on top of mind with everybody is pricing. So the biggest challenge with phosphorus right now is it's only produced in a few parts of the world, and there is very little of it coming to the U.S. right now due to tariffs and countervailing duties. So that has forced phosphate prices really much higher than they should be. The last thing is, ore-wise, the amount of phosphorus that's actually out there is somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 years at current resource uses. So we need to learn how to be much more efficient with the phosphorus we're applying to our soils to ensure that we have this valuable resource available to us in the long term. In the U.S., we maybe have 30 to 50 years of resource available. So again, it's very important that we use what we have very efficiently. And so from an agronomic challenge, the biggest problem with phosphorus is it's highly reactive. When we put a soluble phosphate on the soil, within 30 days, it's going to tie up in the soil constituents. And so for most of those soils, somewhere between 10 to 30% of the available phosphorus you apply is available for plant uptake in year one. So it's very challenging to then get the phosphorus to release that is bound up in the soil. And so what RhizoSorb does is it's a metal oxide that we incorporate into phosphate production, MAP and DAP production. We adsorb the phosphate to it in the manufacturing process. And so when you apply RhizoSorb 8390, our phosphate fertilizer, to your farm field, you get much less of the phosphate binding up in the soil. We essentially hold it like a sponge and feed the plant on a one-to-one basis as the plant is growing. So it comes to retailers as a fully formed fertilizer. Again, direct replacement for MAP or DAP. This, the active ingredient is, again, metal oxides that was developed at Penn State Technology that our company licensed and has spent the last 9 years developing into a fertilizer. This is not a biological. It's a soil chemistry approach. It's essentially what we do is we allow that active pool of phosphate in your soil to be much bigger and feed the plant much more efficiently than what the soil would do on its own. And again, we call this chemical concentration gradient release, meaning that as the plant is growing and pulling soluble phosphate out of the soil solution, RhizoSorb will release phosphate on a one-to-one basis, replenishing that soil solution and feeding that crop all season long. The nice thing about this approach is it's a direct replacement for MAP or DAP. Growers and retailers don't have to change anything else about their program. They can simply change out MAP for RhizoSorb, use a little less on a per acre basis to get the same yields, if not better, than standard MAP or DAP. That comes with a little bit of cost savings for the grower and a little higher margin for retailers. Works across all systems, broadcast, strip till, row place, and we found strip tillers and row place guys really like the lower use rates. In addition to the lower use rates, because we have less ammonia in the product, we have a lower salt index. It's 38% lower on the salt index, and because we're using less phosphate, the total salt load is about 70% less than what you would see with MAP. As I mentioned, we spent the last 9 years developing this. The first half of that was in extensive small plot research trials around the country. In the last 4 years, we've done extensive on-farm trial. This is corn only in the U.S., and over the last 4 years, we've shown that by using RhizoSorb and applying 50% less P2O5 on a per acre basis, we can meet the same yields or exceed the grower standard practice. And so that translates to better ROI for the grower, lower cost per acre, And in extensive trials, we've shown that this approach also does not lower soil p-values. And if you'd like, you can come over to our booth and we can walk you through those trials. So on our on-farm trials, what we show is the technology works independent of your soil type, so sand or silt. It's going to work essentially the same no matter what your soil type is. It works better than MAP or DAP no matter what your soil pH is. So we are feeding the crop more phosphate in all pH ranges. And when we look at the field trials compared to soil test levels, what we show is when you have adequate phosphate, just making phosphate more efficient in feeding the crop will not drive additional yield. So for growers that have high testing phosphate soils, we can now have them maintain their phosphate at a lower cost per acre and redeploy those dollars into something that's going to drive more yield. Micronutrients, more sulfur, a humic, a biological. There's probably something else in that on that grower's farm that he needs to do to drive yield more than phosphate. And at low P values, under 10, we're also showing outsized yield increases. So in our on-farm trials, yields about double the total trials. So we're seeing about a 3 to 4% yield increase in the low P soils while applying less phosphate, meaning we're driving more phosphorus in the plant and having less tied up in the soil. So a lot of farmers that have these low P value soils, they're typically low for a reason. They're either rental ground and they don't want to invest the dollars in building the P value, or they're maybe Western U.S. farmers that have rainfall issues and lower yields, and so they just can't afford to build P value. So for those farmers, we can help them drive more revenue on their farm with the same dollar amount of phosphorus on a per acre basis. And then lastly, the chart in the bottom left is P tissue concentration from our corn trials from last year, and you can see that even though we're applying 50% less P2O5, we're meeting and or exceeding grower standard practice. So the grower economics works out as if the standard grower is putting on around 100 pounds per acre of 1152O, that cost is around $40 per acre. With RhizoSorb, they would apply 66 pounds instead, and that would come with a $4 per acre savings. Our average yield increase is around 1.6% on all of our corn trials, and so that drives an additional $16 revenue on a per acre basis. So most growers changing to RhizoSorb from MAP are going to see around a $20 ROI on a per acre basis. I mentioned some of the sustainability advantages, and with RhizoSorb, we make all of our product overseas and import it, and even with the extra freight to get it here to the U.S., RhizoSorb carries a 45% lower carbon footprint than MAP. So what does that mean? For the growers that can access 45Z, that could mean another 0.3 of a point CI score reduction, which isn't big, but it may be enough to get them under the threshold where they could receive payments for hitting the minimum standard for that grower for that low CI score corn. So I think that one's going to be a big one coming up. The other one is we are approved as an enhanced efficiency fertilizer in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're working on national registration of that. So for growers that are doing a USDA CSP program, they can add RhizoSorb to that program, and they can qualify up to $65 an acre in government rebates for using our technology. And then lastly, our trials, we show 78% reduction in runoff. So that's really huge for all of our water impaired areas such as the Ohio River Valley, and even here in Iowa, there's a lot of interest in looking at RhizoSorb to help clean up our waterways. So as we look at this, this is a very simple solution for retailers and growers to be more efficient with phosphate. You don't have to add another technology on top of it. You're not coating anything. You're not trying to mix something in. It comes as a finished, ready-to-go product. You'll see up to twice the P2O5 uptake compared to MAP or DAP. And we've been working on this a really long time. Again, this technology is developed out of Penn State, where we licensed it and have brought it to market over the last 9 years. Hundreds of small plot replicated trials and on-farm trials have proven that we can increase phosphate uptake with no reduction in soil P value.